So Tim, I think it's 2:00 here in LA. What time is it where you are?
2:00 in LA. So we're good.
What?
We're both in LA.
We're finally in the same time zone. All right, welcome everyone. This is the weekly briefing. I'm Joel. I'm joined by Tim. Appreciate you all being here. What is the weekly briefing? It's that time during the week when we stop just for 30 minutes to say, hey, here's what's going on. Here's something you need to know. Here's a trend, what a hot button issue, that kind of thing. And Tim, last night we struck some interesting nerves as we had a cohort dinner last night with 18, 19 people. And we were asking this question, should we be more agency? But of course, that's just the tip of the iceberg. What do you have to say? And good afternoon to you.
Yeah, good afternoon too. I'm glad to be here, weekly briefing. I love this moment where we get a chance to have a conversation like we were just having with Seth and keep it going here. Great dinner last night. We were almost divided on the table, Joel. So some of the conversation you're having, I didn't get to hear and vice versa. But a lot of people just excited to be together, to meet other agency owners that are in the same place as them, to vent a little bit about issues. And last night we challenged them again about what is the purpose of strategy? How do you understand strategy? And how do we grow if we want to get into strategic thinking? And our guest Melinda was amazing to present some of those ideas. So
yeah, it's worth saying thank you to Melinda Livesey, for those of you that know her. She's a former designer who I think got frustrated, right? We kind of heard her story about getting frustrated by constantly being asked to do, I don't know, work that was either inappropriate or underfunded or what have you. And she ultimately went into strategy. And now she's someone that teaches creatives like us how to sell strategy and how to get paid for our thinking. So thanks to Melinda for being there. And if she can jump in today, she's going to try and join us, but no guarantees.
Yeah. All right, Joel. So before we jump into this topic, or as we jump into this topic, I actually have a counter question that I've been thinking about in this process. And I think others have responded in LinkedIn similar to this thought, is that I feel like we can make an assumption that agency, to be an agency or to sell strategy, is better than something else. So I kind of want to ask the question first, should people want to be an agency? Is this actually a goal? Is there levels of accomplishment or levels of value that if you miss out on it, you've held yourself back? What's the purpose, and should people want to be to begin with?
Yeah, that's actually a good question, because I think we could also argue, right, for a minute, why not to be more agency? And because some people, when they hear agency, they get triggered. I certainly do. It's kind of a hot button word. Why? Because a lot of us hear advertising agency, and that's a whole world unto itself. And so first of all, I would say, I don't think I would advocate anybody in our industry, hey, be more like an ad agency, because first and foremost, ad agencies really, for the most part, are still charging for their time. They sell their time, and when they hire you, they buy your time, and that's a very broken model. So anyone that's charging for your time, don't be more agency. Okay, that would be one thing. I think the other interesting thought is to think about, what does the word agency mean? Like, what is the definition of an agent or agency? And I know one definition that I do like about agency is the word suggests independence and free will and self-determination, right? Like, if I have agency, it means I have freedom to do what I decide is right and what's best. That's pretty interesting. I think that's an interesting concept. And Tim, you had another word or another definition of agency.
No, I actually follow the same way. It's the idea of acting on behalf of another person too. So the ability to freely act on behalf of someone else is an important aspect. And I think that part we imagine is somewhat of a dream job. Or a dream client, someone giving us the permission to say, hey, I trust you. As Seth said, my work speaks for myself. I can do it for you. Just give it to me and I'll run. We kind of would love that moment of knowing our expertise at such a level that is freely granted to us, and we have all the ability to produce within our own free will. But there's also often an exchange, a value exchange, I think, with agency. And not always convinced that every creative person would thrive with just total free will. I believe there's a skill level to what we're doing. And if some of us were to be honest, a blank canvas with no direction is much harder than here's some direction, here's a purpose, here's a deadline, here's the material, here's the tool. And you go, okay, cool. Because I have that, and then the piece that I uniquely have, I can contribute. So there is a scale that some of us completely thrive in without total independence. And others, I think, I think the brand or whoever you're working for might do better if they listen to you and your expertise before they made their assumptions.
Well, so let's just make this acknowledgement. So first of all, these terms, it's difficult when we start to generalize, right? Because I know there are ad agencies out there that are awesome and amazing, and they don't just charge for the billable hour. So I'm not slamming on every agency, right? I'll just say this. I know that there's been this gradual shift in the industry. Like as I talk to owners of, many of these top studios and production companies, right? We heard this last night too, Tim. Everyone is saying, 10, 20 years ago, we were doing tons of work for agencies and a little bit of work for brands. And it's been like this, where I've heard stories of like 80-20 of, it used to be 80%, 20 brand, now it's 20-80. It's overwhelmingly working directly for brands. And I think there's that interesting question of, oh, so you're more like an agency, meaning you're going right to the client, you're working on the problem, as opposed to when you're working for the agency, they've often solved the problem and they're coming to you for execution. And that's okay. But sometimes I think a lot of us feel like if I could just get in there and work with the people and the decision makers and be closer to the decisions, I could create a lot more value. I would be appreciated for my ideas. I could lead this thing, I could run this thing and make a lot of awesomeness show up, right? Whatever that means. And that's, I think, the more aspirational idea that we're suggesting of being more agency means get in there and don't be afraid to come in and have that conversation as a studio or production company where otherwise normally only an agency would be allowed to enter.
Yeah, so I think that's a perfect place of where we want to enter this conversation, is recognizing that there is opportunity, there's higher value, there's greater returns from the work that you're doing, and not presenting yourself as an agency, therefore not asking for the thought leadership you've put into the piece, not asking to be compensated for that thought leadership. Instead, only be compensated for your hours or the deliverable. You really are selling yourself short. Someone is benefiting from your overall expertise, understanding, strategy, direction. That's going to give them a greater return, introduce them to a new marketplace, open up new doors, meet a demographic, get recognition, all those things that people are looking for. And because of the work you're doing, the ideas you have, for you to just simply make a flat rate upon delivery is really selling yourself short, and the opportunity and capability of what's possible in a relationship with a client.
Well, last night when we talked about, we didn't want it to turn into a rant about pitching, because I acknowledge, like, sure, everyone in our industry to some degree or another pitches, and those of us that are pitching still for free, right? That's slowly dying. I know not in every sector, Seth, you pointed it out, like in the film industry, there's still an expectation. But what I can say, and we acknowledged this last night amongst these 18 owners, that, in the entertainment space, it's less. And in the brand space, it's definitely less. That I have this optimism called, look, if we as an industry, if we just all decided tomorrow, none of us are pitching for free anymore, it would die. That said, it's going to take time for us to slowly get this practice out of the normal. We quickly transition though from talking about, okay, forget about pitching, that what does this conversation and engagement look like where we create more value? And we were asking the question of, instead of doing anything for free, right? Whether it's a proposal, treatment, here's our game plan, whatever, how do we get paid for that? Because that's thinking. And that's what Melinda was really there helping us spearhead this question of, I think that means we would walk into an engagement and actually get paid for things like strategy and for planning and those thinking things that we normally, how did you phrase it, Tim? You were talking about, we do all this thinking, but then in the end, we think we're getting paid because we said, hey, here's your 30-second spot. That's what you're paying me for.
Yeah, what we've done is we're actually selling ourselves short as if the deliverable is the result, right? So we almost beg to choose us to deliver the good. And therefore we give out all this huge value up front. And if I was a buyer and I could talk to a bunch of people executing my deliverables and get really good ideas for them for free, I'm not going to offer to pay them, especially if the competition requires them to fight over my pennies at the end of a project to give somebody for execution. I wouldn't want that at all. So there has to be a mechanism inside the seller that waits for a minute and asks more questions of why. Hey, before I get started, before I start answering your questions, before I start begging for your project, tell me why we're doing this. Tell me what you're looking for as a result. What would the overall gain be if I did this successfully? What does a failure look like? And to go into that level of questioning, what we said last night is we're really afraid of that level of questioning because we think it shows our lack of expertise. That sense of deficiency we have, wondering if we can even compete at all. When we ask questions, we're just proving it. That's what we're telling ourselves inside our mind. But then I asked the question, can you imagine going to a doctor's office and having the doctor ask no questions, just start prescribing things? What you'd think, and then the doctor goes, hey, by the way, I'm the cheapest bid. I'm not going to ask you any questions. Here, just take these pills. You'd go, right? So you'd say, like, no, an expert you recognize sits down and says, hey, let me ask you a series of questions. How soon did this happen? Where did it come from? When did you recognize it? How much do you know about it before I start telling you what I think it is? That's a high level of expertise. And then the doctor says, by the way, because I'm asking all these questions, I'm charging you more. My discernment and understanding of what questions to ask you has a high value because I'm getting that out of you. And that's shifting to an expert mindset gets somebody in the process of working with you and engaging you at a higher level and upping your game, getting paid sooner for more strategic work.
Here's a nugget for everyone that Melinda shared with us, which I really liked. This is going to sound paradoxical. She said, the thing about experts is experts know where their knowledge ends. Like they're not pretending that they have all the answers. That's not the definition of an expert. See, an expert is going to say, you said we need a spot. You said to me, hey, how much for this video? I'm asking you questions because I don't know. I don't have the answer. Can you tell me more? Because my knowledge only goes this far. I mean, I was just working with somebody today, right? Going into a classic pitch situation where agency and client are asking, hey, show us what you can do. And our response is, I have no idea. You haven't answered the questions, right? We don't even know what you're trying to do yet. We don't know the real problem. So we certainly don't know the real opportunity. So we just said, slow down before we start designing and doing boards or frames or anything. Like, what? Why are we doing this? Why is this important? Why now? Why us? Like, why? And if you don't get those answers, then you're clearly not in a place where you can diagnose and then prescribe some sort of an amazing solution. So that's the opportunity.
Or as you said last night, it's when you recognize you're not talking to the right person. Oh, if the person I'm talking to can't answer those questions, I'm talking to someone too far down the food chain. Now I recognize where you're putting me in your pipeline, the value you think you're going to get out of me, because you've given me to a freelance line producer that's only been asked to go collect 3 bids. I can discern that when I've asked questions and they can't answer any of them. You're thinking, well, why did you call me? Well, what did you think you were going to get out of me and my company and what we're doing besides just a bid? So there's an opportunity really in asking those why questions to just discern for yourself where you are and reposition yourself. There actually is something very legitimate, by the way, in recognizing where you do fall and being okay with it. We're not always saying, hey, push further, be disgruntled in the process, but the recognition of the value you're looking for from you allows you to make smart business decisions. I'm not going to invest $10,000 into a pitch where I'm a third bid on something, and I could tell by the person that asked me questions, smart about that.
Yep.
I might not get money from you, but I'm also not going to spend a lot. I might just write a Word document. Matter of fact, one of my clients recently told me, I've decided to no longer do visual pitches. So he thinks of the idea, he calls a person, the two of them write up a few paragraphs and a couple ideas, and they deliver it written. Here's my pitches for a motion design company, motion graphics company. But what he's realized is I'm going to put the why questions into the pitch, and I'm going to express things verbally that you're going to understand what my thinking is, not just what my deliverable output's going to be. And the idea of like, you pay me for my design, but I can dialogue through you through my pitch. So it's such a great way to like just twist it on somebody and say, yeah, here's my pitch. Go, let's discern these thoughts together.
Well, there was one story, I won't name names here, but there was one story of one creative director that was saying, as we've slowly embraced this method of slowing things down and asking those questions, especially with brands, that a brand will say, we need to do a video. And we start to ask the why questions and really try and understand and empathize with your situation, that almost every time the scope of the engagement gets much larger. Because wait, you said you needed a video, but as we started asking questions, we realized, well, have you thought about, and wouldn't it be cool if, and all of a sudden the brand is like, oh my gosh, I thought we just needed a video for our trade show, but now that we're talking to you people, you've helped us see the opportunity to refresh our brand and create a whole campaign and all these other moving parts. Because very, very rarely are we actually executing in a vacuum, just like make my thing and go on to fight another day. So I thought, well, that's really interesting. I mean, I like that idea. I think, that's just me personally, but I like the idea of going into a brand and just, instead of doing the one-off thing, how can I engage in a way that we're going to really move your business forward, and let's become the solution that's developing a whole system as your creative agency. There's that word.
Yeah, Seth is saying the same thing too. He's just saying, asking questions back to the client. Well, initially it sounds a little scary. It really does get the landscape nailed down, defining the risk versus reward, which is really huge. That's your business decision that you're making when you engage that client, because the client doesn't choose you, you choose the client. So really good to know. And knowing how to appreciate the opportunity. Misspelled, and then he did it again, opportunity spelled correctly. Good job, Seth, on the correct spelling.
Yeah.
But Joel, last night when somebody asked us, they said, okay, how do I reposition that opportunity? Or, last night specifically was strategy. How do I sell strategy? But we would say, how do I actually get myself into a situation where I can move the chains a little bit and gain some opportunity?
Yeah, and Melinda said it, plus several other people said it who have been through this shift, and it was deceptively simple. It said, just start asking why. Like, start asking the why question. But trust me, the first time you do it, I think to Seth's point and to what I saw Ed made a similar point, it feels weird. It feels uncomfortable. Like, oh, I'm showing, right? Like I'm not posing anymore, and my imposter syndrome starts to want to rear its ugly head, because if I'm asking all these questions, I don't look like the smartest person anymore. So you have to kind of push past that and say, you actually are incredibly brilliant and smart and talented and experienced. You all have that, everyone here. So just, figure out your source of your confidence, and then you enter into that conversation and start asking those why questions. And I think there was another thing that Melinda said that was kind of cool that we talked about, because she shared this in Confab a few months ago. There's actually a benefit to being more human in that conversation, because when you're asking things like, I don't understand Tell me why. Help me learn more. You're being vulnerable. And we all know what Brene Brown has taught us all, right? Is that vulnerability builds a stronger relationship. People trust you because, hey, I think Tim just told me straight up, I don't know. I like that because he's not selling me.
Yeah. It means engagement, right? I mean, the ability to connect shows that you have a listening ear and a thoughtful process to it. So transparency and some understanding of what the other person's against. And there's no such thing as a dumb question. I mean, there is, but the thought process of like, hey, if you actually don't know, you should ask a question or you'll be proven a fool later if you don't ask it sooner. It's better.
Right.
Carolyn, I saw you smile, so you know I'm going to call you out on this one, right? Andre actually is one calling out Carolyn, and he says, I'm curious if Carolyn Hill has felt the difference from a sales rep point of view in regards to brands dealing with studios or agencies. So I'm going to spotlight you, Carolyn, because I see your faces there. Let's.
We love Carolyn. How are you?
Oh my God. Well, first of all, thank you, Andre, for specifically wanting to ask me a question. I have to tell you all that the reason I so wanted to be on this call is because of what happened to me yesterday with one of my clients. Basically, as an agent and a rep, my job is to say yes. Okay. And I've been doing this for more than 20 years. So there are a lot of people, client, agency, whatever, they know I'm going to say yes. I'm starting to become the person of no, or the person of why, which is what you guys have been talking about. And here's why. I have learned in the last couple of years from a couple of deep rooted relationships I have on the agency side that my reputation is that I am easy to deal with. And I always make my clients do a great job on the pitches and whatnot. But the problem is I've realized that the agencies are often setting me up. And this literally happened to me yesterday.
No way.
Happened to me yesterday, where my EP called me this morning and was like, and this was a gigantic job that I lost to another studio. And my EP called me and said, this is not your fault, but I need you to understand that when we were doing that second call, that the ECD did not dial in. I already knew we weren't getting the job. I already knew that they were going into this having picked somebody else. And I was fuming about it all day. And when I saw your email today about what you were talking about, I was like, oh my God, this is what I was talking about today, because the problem is, if I had said, you can only access this talent by giving us some kind of a payment. I mean, you're talking about a 35-page pitch on a job that was between $2 and $3 million. Sorry, you're getting me like, now I'm like, now I'm all mad
But
again.
lack of respect, isn't it? It's a true lack of respect and lack of discernment for,
And consideration, right? Because consideration can be monetary, but can also be consideration called, oh, we're going to turn on our cameras and be present for the call.
But here's the thing, that remember, the agency producer who called me used to be on our side, and she knows me. And all of those things I'm telling you that my other friend who was a major agency producer, told me about my reputation. I was like, oh shit. I'm like, she used my reputation.
they're playing you against us.
And used it against me. So I've actually been trying to be more cognizant of every single thing that you're saying. Things like, why this company? Like, why are you calling me about this? And the other thing is, I've been very cognizant lately about the agencies asking us to do their work for them. And I don't like that. And going to what Andre was asking about a difference between brands. Oh my God, Andre, it is so much better dealing directly with the brands. I've been working with Amazon. I'm on a second job with them. It's single bid. It's, they decide they want to work with us. They give you the job. They know that they like the artist and you're good. So if you can, it's really hard to break that seal with those, what I call the FANG companies, Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Amazon, Google. But once you do, oh my God, it's so much better. It is so much better. So I hope I answered your question, and I'm sorry that I'm on my rant today, but I saw your topic and was like,
I think Andre, he called you out there. No, I think I appreciate you saying that.
I was going to read this comment here from Tim. By the way,
I'll
Carol,
let you go, Carolyn.
Yeah, I should call you because I'm going to be in New York tomorrow, so we'll see and grab coffee.
All right.
Seth's comment was really interesting, right? Did anyone see this here? I also think outside of motion pictures, like you were saying, all the post people on the client side are starting to recognize that companies are not wanting to pitch for free, and they're very understanding of that. If we can get the studio system to also feel this way, oftentimes they're empathetic, but they still say no. We will be out of the unpaid pitching game. Written treatments are for free are also a great way of scratching their back just enough, right? Not the visual, like you said, Tim, to have them know that you are in serious business. Same with our compendium PDF idea I shared with you, tailored for the project, showcasing style and capabilities. Yeah, it's interesting that sometimes it's just like changing the narrative. Like one of my favorite moves, Tim, is when someone like used to call I'll call it creative agency. You're like, hey, we're doing this pitch. And we would just right off the bat say, well, just so you know, we don't typically respond to RFPs and we don't pitch for free, but we're happy to have a conversation. And then we would just change the word pitch to, well, what we find works best is a phased engagement, right? We go through a discovery round and we do this and this. So we're just changing the word pitch. So the whole thing like, oh, we don't pay for pitches, Joel. You know that. I'm like, I'm not asking you to pay me for a pitch. I'm asking you to pay me for something else. And I use a different word. And suddenly the conversation changes.
Yeah, the term I use is ideation. Oh, you're asking us to engage us in an ideation phase. That means I'm going to come up with an idea for you, right? Which, of course, the old idea of pitching a whole bunch of ideas was an ideation phase you give away for free. But without a doubt, the thought process of, hey, let's engage in a conversation sooner than later, the likelihood of me winning. And truly, we talk about this a lot, but it allows us to qualify the client on our own behalf. What's it going to be like to work with you? What's it going to like to be delivered to you? You can give in at any one of these moments in the conversation. You don't have to require, as we're giving you the ideal situation, but if you're asking for it and listening, you have a sense of who you're going to work with and what they're going to value as you deliver. And if it's a profitable project and it is going to give you something for your reel, the relationship's not going to be so great, that still could be a win. Or it's a really great long-term relationship and this project is one that's a dog. Okay, why not? You're helping out this person you have a relationship with. But so the opportunities there are measurable opportunity by opportunity, but who you want to be, we just want to give you the confidence of what to ask and how to ask differently. So if you do want to grow, and this is the area growing, lean into these questions, understand how experts really work, especially experts that you engage every day that you trust. Just mirror that when you're presenting yourself as an expert in a client situation, even though it's unfamiliar to you and maybe even your client, that's the way of engaging. It's still a proper way of doing it, and you're going to be okay. Imposter syndrome you can get over when you're really kicking in as an expert.
So I have one other quick tip because we're have 1 minute left. Because someone might be thinking, okay, Joel, I'm going to try and ask why more and get over that discomfort of asking those why questions. Okay, then what? Well, when the client starts telling you, here's the real problem, this is what we're really trying to solve, this is the value of that, this is why this is going to change our business, whatever. My other tip would be to suggest or propose some sort of a phased engagement where the first phase is, call it a workshop, call it a brainstorm jam session. And I've seen a lot of studios do this where they'll say, that's really interesting. Now that we're understanding the opportunity, let's get our team and your team together. We'll take over a conference room. We'll pull out the finger paints and we'll bring the masks and the crazy board game. And we're going to draw all over the walls and talk about what you want to do, not only with this initiative, but for the rest of the year, and help you see what we see. And then we'll go away and we'll come back to you and present a document to you that's like a game plan for the next year. Well, here's the quarterly executions we see you doing, the monthly things, the whatever. Now, when they pay you $10,000 or $20,000 for that document, you know what they just paid you for? They just paid you for your proposal. Because as you go through the year,
by the way,
like, let's do this job now, this project, so forth. So that can be a really clever way to just shift the value exchange.
By the way, I'll encourage you though that you add zeros, right? So you can pitch for free. That's often what you do. You can create like a phased engagement where the beginning, or you can actually ask for ideation phase or something like that. You might be able to get $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 even at that point. But I've worked with agencies that when they understand there's a method, an overall method of discovery, still the end result is ideation, they're asking for $250,000. So imagine getting $250,000 before you actually started the work you're used to doing. That's developing that entire pipeline into an entire process and method and overall relationship in that beginning stage. So there is, as you were speaking, Joel, like what you're talking about is even a bigger scale and bigger win. If you really love that work, that's what's possible out there for you.
Well, what I know is that, just to wrap us up, is it is possible for everyone here to get paid for your thinking, not because we're greedy, but we're looking for consideration, right? Because we know our clients, none of them value really what they get for free. So we're going to engage with them in a way where they're invested, we're invested, we're both meeting each other halfway and saying, look, I'm going to bring my best, you bring your best. And that produces better outcomes. And that's just more awesome for the world.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we thank you all for being here, the weekly briefing. Joel and I love this moment where we get to share, we're listening, we understand, and RevCommunity is a great place for us to listen to you, get the ideas, and continue these conversations. So if you're not a member of RevCommunity, please join us over there, revthink.com/community. Just give us your email address, follow the pattern, and you'll be in there quite easily. You also can see replays, see other videos that we have, and meet some of these friendly faces you see every week on the weekly briefing. So great place for you to join us. And
hundreds of your peers hanging out there. So it's a good place to be. Thanks for the dinner last night, Tim. By the way, that was dinner number 23. So 24, I don't know. I may have to do that. I may have to do that one in Barcelona this month.
All right. I'll join you in Barcelona.
Okay. Yeah. You're coming over.
Justin Barnes and I are going to come over there. He's going to fly his private jet. We'll go there.
Exactly. I love it. All right. Well, appreciate everyone for being here, being part of the conversation. Carolyn Hill, thanks for jumping in and giving us your latest story. We sympathize with you.
Absolutely.
All right. Take care.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Next week.
Have a great week.
Bye.